There's a certain type of games journalist who doesn't seem to like games very much, or the people who play them for that matter. And the recent Stellar Blade controversy is just further proof. The game's been racking up sales and praise from players, but if you read some of the reviews, you'd think it was a disaster. Not because of how it plays, but because of why they assume people are playing it. Instead of listening and trying to understand why the game resonates with so many players, critics jump straight to judgment. Suddenly it's not just a game, it's a moral referendum. And that rush to dismiss both the game and the people who enjoy it says far more about the state of games media than it does about Stellar Blade. Now, I'll be the first to say the game isn't perfect. The story is bare bones, the level design is over-reliant on yellow paint, and the characters lack real depth. This is a game built for combat, and it shows. But if you listen to some of the critics, you'd think Stellar Blade had nothing going for it but Eve's ass. And I wish I were exaggerating. Here's a quote from one article over at The Gamer. Quote, "There's definitely a key reason Stellar Blade has been a massive success on PC compared to PlayStation, and it has nothing to do with the game's combat." Nothing? Really? That's an insane thing to say. Stellar Blade has a very polished combat system that takes clear inspiration from Sekiro. No stamina bar, cancel windows that reward aggression, tight, intuitive parry timing. Honestly, it plays better than a lot of games in the genre. Sure, it's easier than Sekiro. There's a wider margin for error, but that's not necessarily a flaw. Stellar Blade shares as much of its DNA with stylish action games like Devil May Cry as it does with Souls-likes, and it finds a surprisingly good balance between the two. The game gives you the tools to feel powerful without becoming mindless. Quick dodges, responsive attack chains, and sharp visual cues keep the pacing fast and readable. It rewards precision without punishing experimentation, which isn't an easy balance to strike, but Stellar Blade does a pretty good job of it. So when you say that nothing about the game's success comes from the combat, you're not just wrong, you're disrespecting the devs as well as the players who showed up for something they actually enjoyed. And what makes this even more ridiculous is that Stellar Blade isn't even the most sexual game in recent memory. Baldur's Gate 3 was hailed as a masterpiece, and I agree, it's incredible. But that game has sex scenes involving every main character. You can strip the characters completely naked, no mod required, and no one batted an eye. No outrage, and no moral panic. Why? Well, because BG3 fits the right narrative. It's an RPG with deep writing and darker themes. So anything sexual is seen as mature, artistic, or character-driven. Meanwhile, Stellar Blade dares to put a hot girl in a skin-tight suit, and suddenly it's degenerate. This double standard says a lot more about games media than it does about players. But how does the quality of the writing or narrative depth make the nudity or sexuality any more tolerable? Does the story need to be a certain level of profound before a character is allowed to be attractive? This weird puritanism isn't about protecting standards. It's about controlling tastes. It's not that sex appeal is off limits. It just has to come with the right message. If a game is ironic, grim, or subversive, it can get away with anything. But if it dares to be sincere, stylish, or just fun, then it gets scolded. Instead of asking why a game resonates with players, they default to scolding them for enjoying the wrong things. Fun combat, tight mechanics, who cares? There's a woman in a tight outfit, and that must be the only reason anyone showed up. There's a growing gap between critics and the audience. Most players just want a good experience. Something satisfying, challenging, or stylish. But too many reviewers are looking for moral or political alignment instead. If a game doesn't check their boxes, they don't critique it, they condemn it. That's not criticism, it's condescension. And people are getting tired of it. That's why more players are turning to YouTubers, Twitch streamers, and even Steam reviews instead. They want to know what a game is like, not how the reviewer feels about the people who enjoy it. Creators on these platforms don't act like they're above their audiences. They don't lecture, they don't moralize, they play games, talk about what works and what doesn't, and share their experience. Whether they're praising a game's combat system or just laughing at a janky bug, they talk with gamers, not at them. And that difference in tone matters. Because while journalists were busy diagnosing what was wrong with gamers, creators were building trust by just being honest, passionate, and human. When a game like Stellar Blade succeeds, it should be a moment to ask, what did it get right? Instead, it becomes an excuse to sneer at the audience, as if 3 million people are just too dumb to know better. But maybe, just maybe, it's not the audience that's out of touch. Here's the thing. Even if all 3 million people who bought this game did it just to watch Eve's ass bounce up and down, who cares? It's okay to enjoy things. It's okay to like fun combat. It's okay to like attractive characters. What's not okay is pretending a game has no value just because you didn't like what other people liked about it. If game journalists spent less time judging players and more time reviewing games, maybe they wouldn't be dropping like flies.